All right, so it is Friday. It is right before the MLK weekend. Welcome aboard. So this is the UFT Solidarity Member Support Meeting for January, and it's also the UFC United for Change introduction session. I know a bunch of you attended our intro session on January 2nd. This is designed for folks who are interested in learning more about UFC, as well as what the solidarity angle of UFC is going to provide if we get elected in the 2022 UFT election. So I'm one of your co-hosts, Lydia Harilka, and I'm going to give a chance to my other colleagues to introduce themselves. So Jay, Jasmine, Yvonne, go for it.
Okay, I guess I'll go first since I'm in order as a host next to you. My name is Jay Werner. How are you, everyone? It's good to see all of you. Thank you for coming. I'm a former chapter leader at Bronx Collegiate Academy. We're in the Taft campus, member of Solidarity, and a huge supporter of UFC. Thanks for coming. Next.
All right, hi, I'm Jasmine Testa. I'm the chapter leader at Health, Education, and Research Occupations High School, also known as HERO in the Bronx. And I'm so happy to be, getting to know a little bit more about the UFC platforms. And I'm so excited to be here today. Thanks, Lydia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yvonne Reason, such as in the reason that you are here. Former chapter leader at the Kennedy campus at a school named Beta. I am now in middle school. The 20 years of teaching high school has been quite a ride. I'm here to help out in regards to this member support session, and I'm also part of the UFC. Running for the executive board to represent middle schools. I have lots of information if you need, that's in the chat. Thanks.
All right. Also, I know we have a couple of council members here. So I know Dan is on mute, but Dan Leopold is one of our council members. He is also an at-large candidate for UFC. Lily, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Can you see me? Hi. Hi, everyone. I am a council member with Solidarity, and I'm running for treasurer with the UFC, but I'm also at the high school level. I teach at Heritage High School, and I am a chapter delegate. And I'm here to support you in anything you may need. Thank you.
Awesome. So as a reminder for folks who are rolling on in, we do have a couple of reminders. So first of all, please be respectful of the presenters and your fellow participants. Abusive language or conduct will not be tolerated. Dan, I'm going to kindly ask you to please monitor that. I mean, I've temporarily muted the chat, but when I turn the chat back on for participants, I need a volunteer. Oh, hey, Sally, welcome. So we have Sally Bean, who just joined us as well. Sally, do you want to give a quick introduction? And I'm going to name you co-host right now.
Okay, so I am a special education English teacher in Queens. I work at the Baccalaureate School for Global Education, which is a 7 through 12. Right now I'm teaching 10, 11, and 12. I'm the special education coordinator, the IEP coordinator, and I'm running for assistant secretary for UFC. So I haven't had a lot of issues at the school level with the union, but I started to get really involved via Zoom meetings and online writing campaigns in the summer of 2020, because I have lots of issues with the union as a thing that's supposed to be helping us. Anyway, that's me, and I'm happy to help anyone in any way I can and answer any questions people might have.
All right. So because I know people's privacy is really important to them, if you have a very sensitive personal question that you would like us to respond, Solidarity has a really good helpline. So there is the email on slide 2. And again, if you just came, I'm going to drop the link in the chat again. Here it is. All right. Okay, folks, so let us get started. So who are we? So we already introduced ourselves. Solidarity is a caucus. So a caucus, you can kind of think of it as like a political party within the larger UFT. So Solidarity was founded in 2014 with the focus of member support, because we felt that several pre-existing caucuses and also the major unit itself was not focused enough on bread and butter issues. So we formed Solidarity, and we have run in 2 consecutive UFT elections solo, and we're thrilled to be running with United for Change in 2022. So what is United for Change? So we can go through the video, which gives you a really good introduction as to what we are all about. So I'm going to make sure, yes, my sound is shared. So without further ado, here is what United for Change is all about. All right. So we're all here because we believe in that our union could be greater and better. So this is why you all hopefully all are here. You are here because you believe in some way that our union is inadequate, and hopefully you feel that you are trying to come back with knowledge. So the purpose of this meeting is twofold. A, we hope to arm you with some knowledge that will help and support you in your journey to become a more educated and more well-rounded unionist and an educator in your school. And we also hope that we will encourage you to consider voting for the United for Change Coalition in spring of 2022. I'm so excited to see people are still joining our meeting, which is wonderful. Welcome, folks. So this is a PowerPoint presentation that 2 of our candidates for United for Change created last month. Nick Bacon, who is with New Action Caucus and is an executive board candidate, and Quinn Zanoni, who is a at-large candidate with Solidarity Caucus. So rather than have us read to you the PowerPoint, which is not fun and also kind of immature of us anyway, we're just going to go through several of the key points, because based on the questions you submitted ahead of time, we found that a lot of the points that a lot of you are asking can actually be answered through this pre-existing PowerPoint. Let me add a few more people in, and then we're going to get started. So talking about, your time. So talking about keeping your time sacred. Your prep is your prep, your lunch is your lunch. OPW time is also yours. Anybody who has, who has either been a chapter leader or a delegate or who has worked in a school, has anyone had any issues with dealing with these issues? Any ideas of strategizing? How do you make sure that your principal respects your time? Feel free to jump in either by raising your hand, sharing, but this is our goal, to actually work together and actually figure out, how can we make sure that our administrators respect our time as educators? Jay, go for it. You want to share? start?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to share. When I first became chapter leader, I had a principal who I thought was a decent guy, but he turned out to be someone who was out for me and out for teachers, especially teachers who were tenured and therefore got paid more, let's say. So one thing he would, OPW is other professional work time. Somebody just asked for what is OPW in the chat. So this particular principal would love to schedule things during our lunch hour, during our prep. And once, as an accident, you remind him, by the way, you know, it's my duty-free lunch. It's my prep period. I'm supposed to be prepping for my classes now, not running around at your bidding. I'm supposed to be doing this, not what you're asking me to do. Once he started doing that time and time again, and it was only specific teachers, myself as well, that he was doing it to, I would kindly remind him via email, you know, you asked me to do this during fifth period, which is my duty-free lunch period. Unfortunately, I cannot do it because it is my duty-free lunch period and I will be unavailable for the entire period. If you need me in an emergency, you have my cell phone number. And then I signed it, you know, Jay or what have you. And that worked. That worked for quite a while. And then at one point, he talked to the people at legal about how dare I do that. And they said, yeah, he's got every right to do that. You can't go after him like that. And so he backed off, but he doubled down on other teachers until they started doing what I did and saying, by the way, happy to do it some other period, not during my lunch period, not during my prep period, because those are my lunch and prep. If you need to, and I'm unavailable to do this at that time. If you'd like me to do it some other time, I'm happy to. If you need to reach me, you have my cell phone. And we just did that, and it worked. It worked. Anybody else?
Thank you, Jay.
Hello. Hello.
We're good?
We hear you.
Yes. We can hear you, yes.
Yes, I teach at Riverdale Cambridge Academy, and I was assigned to teach an extra period, to teach a physics class, and I taught that class for 2 months, and then they took it away from me, and I still haven't gotten paid yet. I asked the secretary of payroll to find out where I'm going to get paid. It's still January, and I still haven't gotten paid for the time I covered for that class. Who should I talk to in the DOE for me to get paid for the time that I covered that class? I talked to the principal, I talked to the payroll secretary, and I still haven't gotten paid. My name is Luis Alicea.
Luis, make sure you mute your mic after you're done asking questions. Thanks. I would speak to the chapter leader, and if that doesn't work, I would elevate it to the district rep and potentially get that grieved. Any idea, Yvonne, do you agree with that, or do you think, or do you have another idea regarding extra classes or what happens when your principal forces you to change things?
So Luis, what you definitely have to do is put everything in writing, even a conversation that you have with a payroll secretary. You want to memorialize every single type of interaction. When it's verbal, it could always be like, I don't remember you saying that. I didn't think it came to me. So always put it in writing. You want to make sure that you also have the exact dates that you worked and everything. So when you are putting in an email, it's something that could be sent to a payroll secretary, to a principal, an AP, or what have you. What you may possibly going to have to do is file a salary grievance. Before you get to that step, you want to make sure that you just touch base with your chapter leader. If your chapter leader isn't necessarily receptive or helpful, the fact of the matter still remains, you still follow that step of speaking to the chapter leader, speaking to your immediate supervisor, as well as the payroll secretary, and always follow everything up, every single conversation with that paper trail by memorializing that the events happen.
Thank you, Yvonne.
I don't want to slow things down, but I just wanted to jump in to say that this is one of the reasons why I started to get really more interested in being involved in the union. It's because this happened to a colleague of mine, and because our chapter leader was so lackadaisical, she came to me because she knew that I have no problem confronting administration with this kind of thing. And so I went to the chapter leader and said, why has she not been paid? And he blew me off. And then in a chapter meeting, I said, this teacher hasn't been paid for her extra class. And it was early October and we'd been in school for a month. This was 2019. And he said, I'll bring it up at the next consultation committee meeting. And I said, when is that? And he said, November 4th. I said, no. She can't go another 4 weeks without getting paid. Now, meanwhile, she was taking cabs. She was exhausted. She was ordering dinner instead of cooking dinner. There's a reason why you need that extra money. And then when January rolled around, she still hadn't gotten paid. The district rep was in the building. And I confronted him in front of the chapter leader and said, hey, this teacher is teaching 6 classes and she's not received any pay and she can't get an answer out of admin. It was her tenure year. And he was like, oh, well, there's paperwork. I mean, it was absolutely it went to every level. I called the Queens chapter and said, what happens when this happens? And at the time, what I didn't know was that she could have filed a grievance on her own without the chapter leader, right? So I say all that to say that this is another example of just why we need better leadership and why leadership needs to advocate for teachers when they go to their chapter leaders and get them to help. Because what winds up happening is you might as well be talking to your administration, is how I always felt. So that's my little anecdote about that. But definitely fight for it and do everything that was just said until you get what you're owed, because that's ridiculous.
Thank you, everyone.
Lydia, I wanted to just address Christopher in the chat.
Go for it.
Christopher mentioned, can a supervisor force you to change your lunch with your prep or professional in order for you to meet with him or her to do something else? Absolutely not. That is exactly why we receive in paper form a schedule, and you stick to that schedule like butter on toast, okay? The minute they try to change something, and they'll probably try to say it in passing, or it's like, oh, do you think that just today you could just switch your prep and your professional? Oh, it'll be so helpful. Or do you think you could do lunch this period, just this once? The minute that you allow that Pandora's box to open, you have permitted them to violate you in every which way, shape, or form. So never let them change something. And if they're going to change something, ask them to put it in writing. When you see that they won't do that, that's when you know that they're violating you and the game begins.
One thing I want you all to take from this meeting, if you're going to stay for the full time, or if you're going to leave right now, is always memorialize everything. And if your chapter leader is useless or a tool of the administration or just really ignorant, find a member of your school community that does know a lot, that, like Sally, isn't afraid to push back against administration. There's always one person in the school that you can depend on, even the worst schools. And I've worked in some pretty shitty schools. There's always one person who's willing to help. So the other point, basically, this is there's no such thing as homework. So my old school, my principal tried to give us homework by assigning us a book to read. So we were reading Paul Tufts' Why Children Secede. And everyone was going along with it until the district rep find out, and she was like, oh, no, she can't make you guys read a book and then discuss it. No, if you want, there's things that you can do. You could, in a PD, your administrator can say, okay, we're gonna take a look at this paragraph, and then after a discussion, we're gonna read it, you're gonna discuss it, and then you're gonna find some kind of way to apply it to your practice. An administrator can't say, yo, you're gonna read this book and be ready to discuss it at our next meeting, or at OPW, which I am going to totally discredit and ignore. Can't do that. Can't happen. If it is happening, that's an excessive paperwork violation. You can file an operational complaint with either your chapter leader or your district rep. Take a look at the chat. I love how the chat's lighting up. Great, I see people are already answering questions. Thank you, everybody. All right, does anyone have a question about homework or this kind of thing? I think it's pretty straightforward. They always do, nothing happens. Well, unfortunately, that means you're just gonna have to memorialize. You're gonna have to keep on pushing back. Unfortunately, unfortunately, there's a lot of onus on members. Like if you don't have a strong chapter, there is a lot of onus on individual members to actually push back, and this is unfortunate. And I really feel that this is why UFC, the United for Change Coalition, really needs to do well, and we need your support. All right, here's the fun thing, the APPR. So fortunately, we know that we're being observed. It sucks, it's terrible. If you take a look at the slideshow, there's a lot of links here. So rather than us go through the links, we're actually just going to encourage you all to just go into the chat right now, open up the slideshow, and you can actually just peruse this information. Remember, the more you know, the more powerful you are. All right, I'm going to take a look at Matthew's question. So Matthew's question is actually pretty relevant. Like, how do you get people to stick together and push back and not be afraid? Does anyone here want to share like what are the things that you've done? So I know we have James, we have Jasmine, we have Jay, we have Yvonne. Any ways that you've encouraged people to stick up and not be afraid? I mean, this is a hard question. It's like the $1 million question.
It is a very tough one. And unfortunately, you know, whenever you stand out in one way or another, some would say you put a target on your back or your chest or your forehead or whatever the case may be. And to a certain extent, maybe you do. However, as long as you're in the right, this is my personal belief, as long as you're in the right, you're fine. I know that sounds a little Pollyanna, and maybe it is. Dan says, don't stand out till you get tenure, which is not a bad idea. It's a very good idea. You shouldn't stand out until you get tenure, because without tenure, you can be fired for breathing wrong. Don't ask me how you can breathe wrong, but you can be fired for it. Pretty much, standing up, sticking out, yes, you might put a target on yourself, but if it's the right thing to do, I say do it. That's what I've always done. And at times, you know, that target was shot at, not really shot at, but, you know, people, I had a principal go after me, and, you know, I always enjoy a fight. I've always been that way, which is why people elected me chapter leader many, many times, because I'm happy to fight. Whether you're right or wrong, I'm happy to fight for you. And so that's the way things went in my building. I didn't have to fight very often, but with this one particular principal, I did. Others, you know, I was doing the right thing. They recognized it, and they changed their tune and did the right thing as well.
So I'm definitely with Jay. I've been a fighter for quite a long time. I think it just comes from being bullied to an extent as a child. And one of the most empowering things you could do for people that are scared to stick up, whether they're tenured or probationary, is knowledge. Knowledge is definitely power, especially when you use the language of the contract. So it's amazing when I have probie teachers come to me, or even tenured and veteran ones, and they weren't aware that, you know, you're not supposed to be taking OPW to do X, Y, and Z every other Tuesday. They weren't aware that, oh, but I just changed my lunch this time. I was doing them a favor, or I'm going to get a target in my back. I think, unfortunately, in this day and age, or for as long as I could know, and thinking of education, we as teachers, as educators, always have a target on our back. We bear the burden of society. Anything that goes wrong, you're going to blame education. Anything that happens in the school, you're going to blame a teacher. You never look on up. You always look down to the teachers who are in the trenches. So the idea of the target on your back, just take it for this. You always have a target on your back. And the most you could do is shield yourself with the knowledge and the language of the contract.
And how do you find the contract? Well, Solidarity has made it super easy for you. So if you go to solidarityuft.org, I dropped the link in the chat, but I'm also going to drop a second one right here. That way you can review it on your own time. So this is part of our toolkit. So this is the bread and butter. This kind of helped me out. So when I was a first year teacher in 2012, this didn't exist. So Solidarity didn't exist before we came together in 2014. And one thing that I'm really proud of is that I helped create the Solidarity Toolkit. If you go to Solidarity UFT and you click on Toolkit, you'll be able to see all the resources we have available for you. And if you take a look at the toolkit, you'll actually see not just stuff for tenure folks, you'll see general legal supports. So we divide into probationary, tenured, and legal supports for general. So when you have a moment, I'm going to drop this link in here, save this link, bookmark it, share it with your colleagues and friends. It may come in handy. All right, let's take a look at paperwork. So paperwork is, I think, is a big recurring issue, especially regarding e-paperwork and people path and scheduler. So I'm wondering if our host can maybe talk about a time when you had to deal with e-paperwork and or not even e-paperwork, where there's traditional paperwork. Like what are some things that you've done to actually help? In the slideshow, we actually talked about page 19 of this attachment right here. So does anyone want to jump in and talk about a time when they were able to mobilize membership against a paperwork violation? I personally have not, so I've been lucky in that regard, but go for it, Yvonne.
Woo, the paperwork grievance. This is a great one. Operational grievances are definitely the go-to in regards to how quick it gets expedited. The paperwork grievance is excellent. I have one each and every single one. A lot of the times it doesn't even get to the grievance because there's some keywords that you throw in when you're writing that email to an administrator. Remember, you always address any concerns that you have with your immediate supervisor. If it doesn't get taken care of at that level, you then follow it up in 24 hours to the principal. If you don't like how it's been taken care of there, you follow it up to the chapter leader. You have a chapter leader who doesn't do much for you, take it to the DR. You have a DR who doesn't do much for you either, you take it to the borough presidents. I have found that the borough presidents are very receptive, and no DR likes having that email CC'd and forwarded to their boss. Paperwork grievances are great. What you always have to do is you have to use some keywords, like drop in those magic words that are like trigger words when it comes to expressing your concern. You say things along the lines of, this may be a bit excessive. Do you feel that we could do this in the PD time? If not, please let me know and I could take the next necessary steps. No one wants to hear that you take any more steps, because the steps mean, oh my gosh, this teacher is going to take it out of the building. Oh my gosh, the teacher's going to go to the union. And they usually pull back on that. You definitely have to advocate for yourself. I have a lot of members that I work with that they're always like, oh, but the principal doesn't bother you. Oh, how come you didn't have to stay for that? Because I didn't open Pandora's box. And when I see that principal who's trying to violate you in some way, shape, or form, I make sure I speak up about it and I clearly use the contract language. Those trigger words, excessive. This paperwork seems redundant. How is this necessary? If you can't provide a solution, I'll take the next necessary steps. And that's when you start CCing. CCing is often more effective than just directly who you're speaking to.
I forgot I was on mute. Okay. So as a kind reminder, I saw a message in the chat saying some CLs are in it for themselves. So in that case, if you're going to take one thing from this slide, think of what Yvonne said. If your chapter leader is useless or naive, kick it up to the next level, the district rep. If your DR is not receptive or in cahoots with the principal, kick it up to the borough rep. there is always somebody in the UFT who can actually address your problem. Even though we know unity is useless, and even though we need to vote them out, there are some competent people in unity. You just got to find these people. All right, so grievances, operational complaints. So this is actually from Nick Bacon. So Nick couldn't attend today, but he's a chapter leader at a school in Washington Heights with a known abusive principal. She's bad. But Nick, in spite of this, has told me that he's been able to run every single operational complaint in a timely manner. Grievances are hard, but like Yvonne said, paperwork complaints can be easily rectified. Salary grievances can be relatively rectified because they're done at a borough level, but operational complaints are relatively easy. However, you are going to need the chapter leader to buy in and possibly district rep to buy in, but that's also going to require you to do a little bit of coordination. Has anyone ever had an opportunity to actually do an operational complaint and they've been successful? If anyone wants to share out. Right. So Jasmine, one thing, if you're still on the call, I'm wondering, you happen to have a good relationship with your district rep, so maybe you can share with us what are some things that you have done over the past to like help smooth things out between you and Monty.
Well, I don't think I've ever really had any contention with him necessarily. I mean, there's definitely been some things that we haven't agreed with, like I wanted to do an SBO in the fall, for example, when it wasn't actually like we weren't allowed to change the student day at that point, but my school has like a different structure where we usually take trips, and we couldn't take trips because of COVID. And so I wanted to do an SBO, and he was like, no. So, I mean, that was probably the most recent like sticking point. But I find generally my district rep, Monty, I think he's very helpful, and he responds to me like immediately. I feel like Susan Perez is also really responsive and responds like within 5 minutes. Like we had a fire at our school earlier in the year, and like Susan Perez, she was there, and like, she went to the school in like 15 minutes and was like outside. So I think my school might be a little different than some other schools, but I find our district reps to be pretty responsive and helpful.
Excellent. I'm just taking a look at the chat. Yes, she is. Susie's good. Susie's definitely good. If you're in Brooklyn, Katrina Foy is also really good as the borough safety rep. I know that Staten Island got a new safety rep, Stuart Kaplan. I don't really know much about Stuart. Nick said he was okay as a chapter leader, but then again, he was a chapter leader for a decent principal. So like, I feel like you're really tested in fire when you are dealing with a bad principal versus a decent principal. So hopefully folks have Stuart or hopefully in good hands. I'm not really sure about the Manhattan safety rep or the Queens safety rep, but at least I know in Brooklyn and the Bronx, the safety reps there are pretty good in terms of COVID stuff. All right. Yeah, here's the hard part. I'm sure we've all dealt with this. Like, obeying your principal and then grieving later. This is the part that really just drives me crazy. It's like, something is wrong. So why do your principals just do it, even though they know it's wrong? Because they're on power trips. Of course, we know this. But this is the thing that just drives me crazy. But unfortunately, guys, you just gotta know it. Like, obey your principal, then you can grieve later. Again, like Dan has said, if you are untenured, honestly, it is always best to keep your mouth closed, zipped, bow your head, do what you have to do. One thing that principals do like to do is, especially if you're a first year or second year teacher and you're thinking about tenure, keep your eye out on who gets tenure in your school and who doesn't. Don't stick it out in a school where you see a lot of turnover and your principal seems to be abusing people. It's not going to end well. I have counseled a lot of teachers who have been discontinued in their tenure year. And I asked them, why didn't you leave sooner? Oh, well, it was going great for the first 2 years. Look around you. If things are not going great for the people in your department and around your school building, guess what? Eventually the principal is going to turn on you. Get the heck out of your school if people are not getting tenure, and also if your chapter leader is weak or unwilling to fight. It's that simple. If you are a first year, second year teacher, most likely you are low on salary and you'll be able to bounce. This year, folks, we're going to see a huge turnover of teachers. We're already seeing teachers from very good schools leave. If you are in a bad school, whether you're tenured or untenured, try to get the heck out. I can guarantee this year may be the easier of many years to actually get the heck out of your current school building. There are principals who will hire experienced teachers. One of my good friends who got hired at Clara Barton, she was teaching for 19 years before she got hired at Barton. She's top salary. She's at the very end of the column. Yes, she got hired. It is possible for you to get hired even if you're at top salary. It's hard. It's really hard. If you're an ATR or you have certain licenses, it's really hard, but it is possible. Does anyone want to add on to anything that I said? I think I kind of went off on a tangent, but an important tangent.
I wish I had known you when I was an untenured teacher at a really difficult school, because I wound up leaving the DOE and I called the UFT for help because my chapter leader wasn't doing anything. And it was like they were reading from a script, and they were like, we do not recommend leaving your school or the Department of Education in your tenure year. And I was like, it was a totally untenable, unlivable place. And so it set me back. And if I had had the common sense to sort of look in front of me and see that the principal's aim was to keep, churning through teachers and keeping their salaries low by, it was like, and there was an influx of like 10 fellows every fall. And then going after, we had no one who had more than like 4 or 5 years experience on staff. And there was no one there to tell me, like, just go find something else. And I wish I had known. So, good advice.
Is the floor open for a question?
Is it related to anything we've been discussing so far?
Class size.
Class size, we're going to get to that actually.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So I see someone is asking a question about being able to leave mid-year. So you can technically leave you can resign. You can resign if you give 30 days notice. However, the DOE has stopped the transfer period mid-year of high school, middle school, and elementary school teachers. It used to be permissible that you could transfer out. Nowadays, unfortunately, you can't transfer out. I suggest keep your head down and quietly leave during open market season. Do what you need to do, get your effectives in, and leave the moment you can. If you want to leave the DOE, it's a different story. You can just hand in your 30 days notice, talk to the UFT to make sure everything's done all neat and kosher. That way you can return. I've known many people who have resigned and they've come back later, but they've only been able to come back later because they followed all the protocol. If you mess up on a step, the DOE nails you and they can say, you didn't do this. You messed up on a technicality, and that's really hard to get in. All right, safety. I mean, this is like a big thing that a lot of you are mentioning, and also is a big issue that we're having in school. So Jasmine talked about a fire in her school. She is very lucky to have a good relationship with Monty, and they were able to get it solved. For safety, always get to know your borough safety reps. Since I have all your emails, I'll be emailing you the list of them. I believe I forgot to mention their names and emails in this slideshow, but I could always email them to you at a later point. But keep in mind, COVID is an airborne virus. And unfortunately, we are in schools that don't have proper HVAC systems. So we're dealing with window ventilation in the winter. It's cold. A lot of us are being forced to use our own heat purifiers. Of course, this is no guarantee. I happen to have a classroom with windows that open widely. I get nice breezes from the park across the street from my school. I had 3 purifiers and I still got COVID. So I spent this whole week home sick with COVID. Like, I know many of us have gotten COVID in our schools and there's no surefire way. I mean, unfortunately, we're very limited as to what we can do because our union is just useless and they haven't been doing what they need to do in terms of keeping us safe. We should be remote. We should have a remote option to reduce class size because I really feel that that would help us a lot greatly. And unfortunately, we're just limited to like these steps that you can do contractually. Take a look at the chat. Chat is like blowing up. Ah, yes, I see some places. Oh, good. I'm seeing folks are talking about getting jobs. So if your school building is really like not safe or unsupportive, how do you find jobs? Yes. So Solidarity actually has a guide for finding jobs. If you, I forget the exact link because we changed websites and we updated things. But if you go to solidarityuft.org and you just click and you go to toolbox, we have job finding stuff that you can find there. We have a really good list of resources that we found through experienced teachers, mid-year teachers like myself, that can definitely help you out. Jay, do you want to talk a little bit about COVID safety in your school building? Because one thing I've been really impressed is the work that you've done in your school and keeping your members safe when you were a chapter leader.
Okay, thank you. I'll talk about that a bit. So COVID safety is, it should be at the top of everybody's list. Unfortunately, for some people, staying warmer is higher on their list than not getting COVID. And that's unfortunate. But one thing I tell everybody to do, and that I do every chance I get, is open windows. In my school, I'm like a traveling Wilbury. I go from room to room to room. I don't have my own room per se. I know some people do. I don't. I travel almost as much as the kids do. So every time I walk in a room, whether I have a co-teacher or not, I walk in, grab the pole. It's an old building like many of us teach in, with the poles that you got to open the window from the top and whatnot. And they have those blocks. You can't open them more than 2 inches. I open all the windows. Half of them are jammed. That's okay. I open the half that aren't jammed. And I complain to the custodians and the principal. I email them both. I email the principal. I email the custodian. I CC the principal. And that's on keeping all the windows open. And very often, it's the second I leave, my co-teacher or whomever will close the windows. The kids will complain about it, and I'll tell them point blank, I don't want you to catch COVID, and I don't want me to catch COVID. You'll bring it home to your family. I'll bring it home to mine. It's possible, if we were to do that, that someone in our families could die. None of us want that to happen. So we grin and bear it. I wear a sweatshirt all day. You guys, before COVID, you never saw me wear a sweatshirt. You never saw me wear a fleece. You never saw me wear a knit hat. I do that all day, every day now. We don't want to get sick, so we take precautions. One thing that I had the science teacher do is do a lesson with every single class. The science department, not a science teacher, the science department did it with all the classes and informed them that being cold air does not give you a cold. Cold air does not give you the flu. And that was important. And cold air also doesn't give you COVID either. So it was important that they know that cold air won't make them sick, because that is a common myth among all people, educated as well as uneducated. Cold air makes you sick, so you can't go outside, you can't open a window, and that's foolishness. So we do that. Masks are key. The biggest pain in my ass is that every period when I walk through the halls, instead of being able to zip from class to class, I look at the kids walking past me and I say, you put on your mask, or I'll just go like this as my mask is covers from here to here. I'll go like this, cover your nose. I want you to stay safe, cover your nose. Some kids will look at me like I have 10 heads. Other kids will comply right away. It's a crapshoot, but I still do it, and I still encourage all the other teachers to do it, and the principal and everybody else does it as well. So that's another step. Also, as far as my personal masks, I buy my own. I'm not saying you should. I'm not saying that any of us should have to. The KN95s that my school purchased, or that the DOE purchased and distributed, I have a big head, a big noggin. And so I have this thing that looks like a beak, and makes my ears come forward like Dumbo, and it hurts my ears like hell. So I found these, a friend of mine recommended these KF94 masks, which are made in Korea, which are like a 3D kind of thing. They're far more comfortable, and they're made a little bigger so they fit my head. I've used a ton of my Teacher's Choice money to purchase those masks. One of the greatest things I ever did. Somebody posted KN95 and KF94 can be used. Yes, that's right, Lydia. Teacher's Choice deadline, I believe, is today. So if you have any money left over, if you have anything left out of that $250 and you want to buy some masks, go on Amazon now. They have a ton of them available. That's where I get my masks. So that's an idea. Also, hand sanitizer. Allegedly, the city gave all schools hand sanitizer. I keep asking for it and I keep getting it. Other teachers complain to me that they don't get it. And I say, well, did you ask? And they said, who do I ask? I said, well, there's this funny thing called an email. It's a paper trail. You send an email to the person in charge of it, the dean, actually one of the deans is in charge of it. Send an email to them, CC the principal. You will have that hand sanitizer before the end of the day. I guarantee it. And the funny thing is, I'm not the chapter leader in my school. I'm a former chapter leader. However, they all come running to me first before they go to her. I don't know why. She's great. She's great. So they come running to me. And for things that I'm too busy to deal with right now, I say, listen, talk to Roxanne. She's your chapter leader. She's the one who can get you this information more easily than me. Please talk to Roxanne. And then I go to Roxanne. When I see her, I say, hey, Roxanne, so-and-so is going to come to you about this. So I give her a heads up so she knows to be prepared to answer that question. Because I want to support her as the chapter leader. Again, I'm former chapter leader. I want to support her. I want to keep the chapter strong at my school. And I don't want to do 3 or 4 jobs at the same time. I hope I haven't talked too much about safety and COVID. Is that enough? Am I good?
That was great.
Thank you.
All right. Jasmine, do you want to jump on and?
Sure. So, about KN95 masks, I've been getting a lot of questions at my school about the masks, and apparently we only get 1 mask a week from the union. But if you look up a K95 mask, it's only good for like 25 hours. So that would take us to what the previous speaker was saying about you can use your teacher's choice to purchase masks, because I mean, if you think about you're like, you know, say you commute on the subway, like how many hours you're wearing a mask, like commuting to your job, you know, 25 hours, it's not going to take you through the whole week. So I definitely think 1 mask a week is for most people not sufficient. And you are also supposed to be getting test kits. Like every teacher is supposed to get a test kit every week. That even if you're not exposed, I believe you're supposed to get a test kit every week. You're supposed to be able to get one. So I've been getting a lot of questions about like the masks and the test kits, but yes, you can put your masks on Teacher's Choice. So I would definitely say if you have any money, get those KN95s.
Jesse has a great pro tip that he just gave in the chat. Thank you, Jesse. Just like what Jasmine and what Jay said, if you want something, you need to stand up and speak up. Administration is very good on making it really nice and pretty on a DOE email, making it really nice and formal, like, yes, you will be getting your mask every week and I will be putting test kits in your boxes weekly, and then the next week comes and it's not there. Well, then let her know that you're aware that it's not there and you will get what you need. It's not only just about having the inside connection with the head custodian, it's about, once again, documenting and putting everything in writing. My students are very aware that I am like COVID crazy, and that is because I got COVID from them back in early January 2020. when it didn't even have a name. So it was about 6 different things I had, from like pneumonia and sinus infection and bronchial attack and tonsillitis. And then it said flu variant TBD. And I'm like, what is this? I was out for a month and a half. And the kids know that now, because of COVID and being out for a month and a half back in January 2020, I now have a walking stick. My lungs look like Swiss cheese. I can't even take a flight of stairs without losing my breath. I have a respiratory breathing machine at work when, if it has to come down to that nature. So you have to be consistent and adamant about following those COVID safety regulations, because the minute you don't do it, trust me, someone's looking and saying, oh, but you didn't follow the social distancing. Oh, but you didn't open the windows. My windows are open from the top at least 2 or 3 inches. I have both of those horrible air purifiers on when we know they're really not doing anything. The doors are open. The kids are 3 feet apart. I have them in perimeter seating, and in the middle, they have the plexiglass, and I touch no one and I look at no one. And even out in the floor, out in the hallway when they line up, it's 3 feet apart, and I have it marked on the floor, and I have my wipes. And when I don't have a set of wipes, I say something and follow it up with an email. And in at least, if not 15 minutes, by the end of the period, I usually have 2 or 3 containers of wipes, and I end up cutting them in half. And every kid gets a wipe when they come in, and every kid gets hand sanitized on the way out. I'm definitely the one, like it said on the slide, I'm big on taking videos and pictures, and I'm big on sending that via DOE, which no one likes because you don't want anything on that DOE server and you can't control it. The whole DOE has eyes on that. So I've taken such a number of pictures that now the custodians know the minute they're on the 2nd floor, Mrs. Reason's room is the room they have to clean first, because she's going to show up and see that there's stuff on the floors. So you want something to happen, you're getting promises made or things being said and you're not getting it, you have to stand up and speak up. And this is the time to do it.
So it's awesome. So we've actually been at this for an hour, and as much as I would love for us to go on further, I know that we all have weekends and we all have families and we all have lives. So I know one person, Joanne, asked about class size. So Joanne, I'm gonna fast forward actually to the slide about class size. So Joanne, do you have your question about class size? And then we can have Joanne's question about class size. And James Eterno is here. He wants to talk about his blog and his role with UFC, and then we can close for the evening.
I appreciate that, Lydia. Real quick, my admin's great. I've been lucky enough to have a 17-year career with supportive admin, both previous and current. I'm in District 20. Yeah, I'm in District 29, 195 elementary school. My question is how we ended up to where we were, which freaked me out when it opened in September. We had 33 on our roster, 31 in the other 4th grade, and in the both 5th grade rooms, close to 30. I'm in an ICT, so that adds 2 adults. In June, contractually with the collective bargaining and things that got on as we were still blended remote with that point, no more than 12 kids, safety, testing, all that criteria to do it well and safely for everyone. Flash forward 2.25 months later, and we have 35 people, sardines sitting in a room, and it really freaked me out. So we go through September, October, and admin's working and talking. She's new, talking to DOE about getting an additional teacher for both grades. She's denied. We let it lay, kind of doesn't really hit until Omicron got really bad. Kids started dropping like flies, staff started dropping like flies, and I'm realizing how many people I'm in a room with. So I saw it. Somebody had mentioned, chapter leader again, admin, district rep. Somebody's going to care. What would you advise? I have 29 now, and me and the other teacher, we make 31 when we are together, because obviously we're covering the whole school because there's 2 of us. Thank you.
I mean, it's hard. I mean, like, because we know, like, it's class sizes, you can see in the slide, it's not contractual. I mean, like, the UFT hasn't fought for class size for a very, very, very long time. And it needs to be contractual. And the UFT has been pushing back. It's like, why can't, class size can't be contractual, blah, blah, blah. It's best that we do laws. And yet here's the UFT Unity saying, oh no, we're going to push for Corey Johnson to push a class size bill. Well, guess what? Corey Johnson didn't vote on a class size bill, and then things expired. And Corey Johnson was supposedly to be our biggest ally in City Hall. So we are trying with UFC, like, we're really big on class size, reducing class size. So Joanne, I don't have a solution. All that I can really provide you is, I asked Nick and Quinn, I was like, so what are you guys doing to reduce class size in your school? And they basically said, there's not really much we can do other than just think about chapter leaders filing complaints. And especially
Well, yeah, my
Yeah.
question, but basically it's like just diplomatically and professionally going forward, I was thinking of emailing my chapter leader to follow up with my principal as well, and ask, due to the surge, obviously the next variant that they've already found to be surges and no option of remote and site, to just include her. That would be professional, to collectively speak about it again with her, but also with the chapter leader at this time for first. Thank you. Is
Yeah.
that what I would do?
I would, yeah, definitely.
Okay, great. That's I needed that advice. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Again, like, I wish we had better solutions to how to deal with class size.
I understand.
I wish we
I
did.
understand.
It's a bane of my existence too, and I have big humans in high school.
Yeah, I 17 years I've seen it, but with obviously with COVID, it changes everything.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It does.
I think she should definitely speak to the chapter leader, because the chapter leader and she could speak to the custodians. They have the room size and how many bodies are supposed to be in the max bodies in a room. So she could use that information to fight for her case.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Another thing is, as special education teachers, which I am also, we have, it's 40% special ed and 60% gen ed. Those are by law. Anything above that, they have to put in paperwork, and they are only allowed, if they submit the paperwork, one additional student, not two, not three, not four, one. And that's if they get if the APs get permission to do that. So that's another way you could fight for your students. You could frame it as, there's too many students in the class. My students need a smaller group, like a smaller class size. This is just too much. You could approach it that way as well. I'm thinking, I lost my train of thought. There was something else. If I think about it, I'll let you know again. Okay.
I appreciate it. Really, I do.
Joanne, quick question. Are you referring to a regular gen ed classroom or an ICT one?
ICT, we have special ed gen ed mix. We started the year with 33 students. We have 29 now, and obviously a gen ed and a special ed teacher when we aren't polled. One of us is there.
All right,
Yeah,
so I definitely want to follow up with what Luli said. I'm in complete agreement with, you got to use those, what do they call? Oh, you got to use IEPs. You got to use the language, the IEPs, and get very strategic and very stringent when it comes to it. When you file a SPED complaint, Carrie Yeffett is unbelievably phenomenal in the UFT, and she is on it. Like, it's not even 24 hours. You get something from Carrie Yeffett by the end of the day, and she is emailing you, contacting you, you're having a thorough conversation. She gets on that principle in about 48 to 72 hours, and you see changes being made. In regards to class sizes, because of COVID, we originally started at 25 kids a piece in our classes, and one cohort, which was originally 5 sections, was 6. Unfortunately, due to COVID and just due to overall frustration of the environment that's in my current building, we've had lots of teachers resigning and quitting in the middle of the year, and that left then administration to decide, not to go and hire someone else, but instead let's collapse classes and let's just shove the kids more into each other. If I'm following COVID regulations and I have these kids 3 feet apart because I have my little measuring tape, I'm always laying it out there. I didn't even have furniture for these extra kids that they were putting in. So it then became, I'm telling the kids, look, unfortunately, we're violating safety guidelines here because you guys are now collapsing and mixing in, and I don't even have seats for you. It got to the point where the kids started calling and texting their parents. They would take a picture of the room and say, look, Ma, there's not even seats for us. The parents were calling back to school. Why are you violating safety COVID guidelines? And why does my kid not have a seat? What they managed to do was roll in a couple of new chairs, and they're just banking on the fact that, hey, hopefully kids won't show up, or they're staying home, or they're sick. So I haven't had the full 29 that are now in some of these sections, but they rolled in seats, and I've still managed to keep the kids 3 feet apart. In regards to that ICT class though, Carrie Yeffet is who you want to contact, and you want to file that SPED complaint ASAP.
All right, much appreciated. Thank you.
So this actually, so James, if you're available, do you want to say a couple words before we close?
Thanks,
James,
Lydia.
go for
Just a quick one on that. Make sure the ratio is right for the class size. It shouldn't be more than 40% with IEPs, and that's any kind of IEP. So make sure the ratios are right, and if they're not, put in that special ed complaint immediately, and also say if the union doesn't, and usually they're on these things, but it's still within the DOE and the city. So if you're not happy, go to the state education departments. Luli talked before, they don't play. They really don't play, and you will get action. You'll get action if you go to the state. We did at Jamaica, at Murray Bertram, they got real action there too. Anyway, just very, very, very quickly, because I know you want to start your weekend. If you're looking for information, we try to post, ICE stands for Independent Community of Educators, ICE UFT. We used to run in the elections. Now we're sort of a uncaucused caucus. We're definitely helping with United for Change, and with very happy to work for Lydia, or with Lydia. You should see the work she's done, everybody here, in terms of a lawsuit, and also at the same time putting together a very good slate, including some of the people on this Zoom. So what we try to do is provide news, usually daily. Sometimes we skip a day or two. Sometimes we do 3 or 4 on one single day. So we try to get you the news and some commentary also. You can also go to EdNotes online, which is done by Norm Scott. And again, you'll get commentary on what's going on, and also a nice perspective that's a little bit different from what you'll get from the New York Teacher. And we think it's good reading, and we're happy that so many people are coming with us and joining. Last thing, I don't know if you said this before, but we need 750 people to run on the United for Change slate. The convention delegates, the AFT and NYSET, we hope everybody here will join us and get more people in your schools to join us too, because we want to run that full slate and show the union leadership that there are numbers here. And the last thing I want to say is there is safety in numbers. So the people who were talking before that they feel alone, and you said even in the lousiest of schools, there's 1 or 2 other people that'll help you, 1 or 2 go-to people. Well, if you can combine and you can start a spark, if it's 2, 3, 4, 5, you put in the same complaint, and a lot of times that'll have a little bit more power than if just one person is doing it. One person, I know it's hard, and you're out there and great, but try at least to get other people along with you Because if you can fight collectively, that's the power of unions. Thanks a lot. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Oh, Fran, you have a question. And then Norm, if you're available, if you want to shout out your blog before we close, that'd be great too.
With the special ed complaint forms, they are also completely anonymous when you do fill them out. So you don't have to worry about repercussions. And when they contact you, if you don't trust your chapter leader, because I've run into this issue before, they do not have to give the chapter leader your name when they contact the chapter leader as well. And like James said, taking it to the state works wonders, because I've went over to UFT several times, and I tell you know, me, I'm a little bit more blunt than most people. I'll tell my principal, I'm going to take it to the state if you don't correct this. I can't deal with A, B, C. It gets fixed. Just wanted to share.
Thank you, Fran. We love
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Norm, are you still on the call?
Yes.
Cool. Norm, shout out to Norm. Norm is also instrumental in the United for Change Coalition. So this is Norm's blog, EdNotes at Blogspot.
You okay?
How you doing, everybody? Good to see you. Great meeting, guys. Really very useful, very informative. Even I learned some things too. I don't want to talk about my blog. I want to talk about the election for just a second. We think we can win. We can win whole sections of this union. The toughest one in some ways will be the elementary school. So if you are an elementary school teacher, we really need you to work with us to get out the vote in your school and possibly to petition. So get in touch with us through Lydia, get in touch with me, trying to put together a committee of elementary school teachers to focus on getting out the vote. That's been the biggest gap all these years between us and Unity. We think we can beat them there. Thanks a lot.
All right. So again, if you have a question that couldn't be answered today, email us at the UFT Solidarity Helpline. Again, it's anonymous. So if you email us, you know, we're not going to share your personal information with anybody. It is literally seen by myself, my colleague Jonathan, who was on this call as well, and Francesco Portello. So three of us are usually the ones who see it. Quinn Zanoni also jumps in as well. The three or four of us usually see it. We address it, we deal with it, and we rectify it. So please email us if you have a question or a concern. And like Norm said, if you like what you heard and you think this is what your union should be doing for you, like having these actually useful meetings to actually help you, you know, problem solve together, please vote for United for Change. Please join us. And the links are here. And otherwise, have a great day, everybody. Thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend.
Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for coming. Thank you, Lydia.
Class dismissed.
Thank you so much for your help.
You're very welcome.
Glad to get on board.
Glad to meet you, Joanne.
All right, Lydia, take care.
Take care, everybody. Okay, I'm going to stop recording. That was great.
That was fun.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
I remembered. I'm like, yes, that's what it was.